Hey Mindset members, Dr. Ellen here, coming to you today with your next Tire Talk. All right, today's topic is shoulders. So I had a few emails about shoulder pain, what do I do about it, things like that. So let's start with a little bit of anatomy and physiology just to wet your whistle, get you moving and grooving on this topic so that you can start to educate yourself and then we together can build on this. All right, so to begin, the shoulder is classified as a ball and a socket. Okay, but it doesn't actually look that way. This is what a traditional ball and socket would look like if it was well seated deep in the joint, similar to what the hip looks like. However, in the shoulder, it looks more like that. All right, so the bottle cap resembles the glenoid, which is the socket side, which is actually a part of your shoulder blade. Okay, and then the ball represents the head of the humerus as the arm bone comes into the shoulder. So as you can see, just by nature, there's not a ton of overlap or stability provided by the sheer nature of the bony alignment. Okay, and the reason why this happens is because we sacrifice the stability here for all of this amazing mobility. All right, so it's a pretty unbelievable system if you think about it, to be this shallow, but you can kind of see why some people then might dislocate with abnormal forces or with a fall or something along those lines, because it really doesn't have a ton of bony stability. You hear about people dislocating their shoulder a heck of a lot more often than you hear people dislocating their hip. And the reason why is just by the sheer anatomy of it all. All right, so if the shoulder doesn't get a ton of stability from the bony alignment, well then where does it come from? And the two main sources are your capsule, which is a fibrous band of tissue that surrounds that, this whole joint. And I think about that if you've ever played softball or baseball and you get that baseball mitt, and the first thing you do is you throw your softball in there and you wrap it with rubber bands or tape and you throw it in the oven or you jump on it or try to loosen that structure up. That glove kind of resembles how the capsule works. So it goes in all sorts of planes around the entire thing to provide a lot of stability. And even though it's not very thick in nature, its tensile strength is pretty unbelievable. So the capsule is one piece of it. The other piece is the musculature. So that would be an active stabilizer, whereas the capsule is a passive stabilizer. So when you want to modify joint tissue and stability in the shoulder, your best bet is to work on the active structures. Most people know that as the rotator cuff. There's more in the equation, but let's just take that group. That grouping is a series of 4 muscles that provide the stability in all sorts of different directions, and they mostly provide external rotation. Okay, so they keep the ball centered in the glenoid. They don't allow a ton of slop or extra movement at the joint. So they want to keep it centered so that is nice and stable for all the movements that you're going to provide. Okay, so think about a tent. So if you had the center pole in the tent, meaning the arm bone, going all the way up into the joint, okay, the rotator cuff are kind of like the ropes to each corner to give you stability. So if those are of the right length and tension relationship, well then you got a really sturdy center pole or really sturdy arm bone going into the joint. But if they're weak, or maybe there's a fraying or a tearing of one of those, well then you're going to get some extra slop in that tissue and it's not going to be very stable. A small little wind or an external stressor could come in and cause some big problems. So that's why it's really important to have the rotator cuff be at maximum capacity and functioning optimally so that you don't have that center pole be slopping around in the joint, pushing on other structures, potentially causing damage or inflammation. So here's a couple exercises that you can do on your own to kind of test out, feel out how your rotator cuff is performing. So we're going to start with something pretty darn basic and then as well something very safe that you guys can all try at home. So all you need is an elastic band, something like this. And then I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to put this ball right underneath my elbow because you want that elbow to stay right at your side. You don't want that migrating outward. So if you use something underneath you and that elbow does come up, that ball or towel roll or something like that is going to drop. All right? So the first movement we're going to do is called external rotation. Okay, I'm just going to take that ball out so you can watch a little bit further in range. Okay? So the variation 1 that you're going to do is that outward motion and inward motion are going to be the same amount of time. So meaning they're going to be the same amount of speed. So we're going to kind of do it at about a 3-second count. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the going out is called the concentric phase, and the slowing or the coming back in is called the eccentric phase. So in variation 1, they should match, okay? Variation 2, concentric is fast, it's about 1 second. Eccentric is about 5 seconds, so it's a 1 to 5 ratio. So we've got 1 second out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in, 1 second out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in. And then the last one, variation 3, I call the burnout. Boom, 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 boom. Staying mid-range and hitting it really, really hard, okay? If you can get 10 to 15 of each of those, you're in the money. You're doing really, really well, okay? So see how you do. Compare your dominant and your non-dominant sides to get a little bit of feedback. Something to remember when you're trying these, especially if you're doing it for the first time, is the rotator cuff is very small. And so when they get fatigued, they're going to ache. It's not going to be your traditional muscle burn that you would normally feel in some of your larger muscle groups. This is going to be a little more achy. So as long as it's achy and when you stop, it gets better and goes away within a minute or two, then you're fine. But if you start to get some tension or some pain and things like that referring up into the neck, it means either A, you're doing it wrong, or B, you've exhausted the shoulder, and now you're recruiting secondary reinforcements up here into the upper trap and some of the muscles that are predominantly not meant to do external rotation, okay? So some tips, you got 3 different variations of external rotation. Watch for compensatory patterns, I don't want those. And just remember, aching in here that goes away within a couple minutes, totally okay. All right, so if you have questions, let me know, send me an email, you know where to find us, mindsetpt.com. But we love you more than you know. Have a great week.